Sabya, you have said fashion being so public and so social, it always makes a political statement. What is the political statement your clothes are making today?
I don't know if it's a political statement or a social statement, but I always say that, luxury can never be born from a point of subjugation. It needs to be born from a point of arrogance. And you are only arrogant if you're proud of your roots. So I say be Indian.
Yes, you do revel and showcase a lot of Indianness in your clothes. What gives you this very deep sense of pride in India?
Bengal is not a state, it's a country on its own. Because if you look at any Bengali, you might not even have a penny in your pocket, but you'll always have a pocket full of pride. And I think my sense of self and my sense of pride, you can even call it a little bit of misplaced arrogance, comes from the fact that I come from this part of the country.
Are you proud of our country right now?
Yes and no. It's a little bit of a divided India right now, if I see, because I see India is going in two different directions. There's a part of India that is holding up the mantle of being Indian. There are more and more people who are coming into this country, and most of these people are outsiders. You can call them non-resident Indians, who are coming into India to discover India in a very pure form. But then there are a lot of Indians here who are confused desis, who don't know if too much of being Indian is a good thing. So I think India is divided between two halves. And it shows in everything. It shows in the clothing that you wear, in the food that you eat, in the architecture that you build in your cities, in the music that you listen to, in the books that you read. And I think it's a very divided country between I love India and I'm not sure if I want to be Indian.
Wow. Where does the Sabyasachi aesthetic fit into this divided India? Where are you?
I always say I love India. You can see that in everything that we do, because I think also what is happening is that if you look at the groups, there is a minority group and there's a majority group, and there is also a group that's an influencer group and that's a follower group. So slowly, the minority group, which was I Love India, is becoming a majority group, and the I Love India group has become the influencer group that is actually influencing a lot of people. Like I'll tell you, in the last few years, let's talk about fashion, which is a domain that I come from. Let's talk about people like Anita Arora. Let's talk about Raw Mango. They have Anna Villa. All these women who used to wear blingy dresses have started wearing khadi saris. I think what's happening, the power of India is so dominant, and in many ways it's so steeped in social arrogance that a lot of people are now realizing that it's better to shift to the other side to be recognized as somebody to reckon with.
But is it also because the Indian aesthetic actually suits the Indian body type much better?
No, I don't think so. I think the Indian aesthetic had suited the Indian body type for the longest time. But if you look at it, a lot of people for the longest time have also been very confused about how much of India. You see, they say that luxury is always measured by some sort of a distance. At one point of time, luxury used to be measured by the distance of money, which means that if you had a certain amount of money and you could buy something that your neighbor could not, you said that you had access to luxury. But as money became more and more democratic, luxury was defined by things far more intangible, like culture, education, sensitivity. And I think all of these things have actually made a very big shift in people's mindsets, from moving on from things that you just buy mindlessly just to separate yourself from your neighbor, to being a lot more inclusive about things which are available within your like I remember that Tagore had said something very profound. He said that, you've traveled all over the world looking for beauty. He's spent a lot of money, gone to different places, never knowing that beauty actually lay on a dewdrop on a blade of grass right next to his doorstep. I think what's happening with people is that, what the internet has done, the internet has made people into confident consumers. Earlier, when there was no internet and there was no connectivity, you used to believe that your personal sorrows or your failings or your shortcomings or your insecurities were only yours. Now today, you see there is a forum for plus-size women. There are people who wear saris to work every day. There are women who there are women who like to dress up a certain way which society doesn't approve of. And then when you realize that there are many other people like you across the world, you just start realizing you multiply your confidence because of multiplication of friends around. And I think that kind of confidence has given people a different kind of a consumer behavior. And that's one of the reasons why social tastes are changing so drastically. Everybody's embracing themselves, and people's fashion is becoming more and more inward right now rather than outward. So earlier, the world was full of fashionable people. Now the world is becoming full of stylish people. And style has always been about working with wearing what works for you rather than what works for the world.
It's a little optimistic, Sabya, because I think in a way, Instagram is kind of making us all fashion victims because we're seeing so much more of the stars dressed all the time in different outfits. And then you're like, oh, but I don't look like this. And you're always posing or trying to look like them. It's not made you more confident, it's made you underconfident. So many of the teenagers now and young people just judge themselves on social quotient, right? How many likes did I get on Instagram? Or how many followers do I have?
No, Kalli, I think it's also getting, you see, this is the churning of the oceans. People are getting a little polarized because I'll tell you that, I said that China showed to the world what India could do. I was talking about this earlier with you. I said that when there is so much of crass mediocrity available, people go back to the real thing. What the Instagram is doing by constantly putting pressure on you again and again and again, there are more fashion dropouts than fashion followers. More people are realizing, okay, this is not a game that I want to be in. I would rather stay true to myself. Like you were asking me a question that do you do new things? I said I don't do new things anymore because I believe in doing the same old things, because I think I have built an entire business by making people feel secure about the kind of clothes that they like to wear and don't date them. Like I don't tell them that 6 months later you cannot wear this outfit, which is one of the reasons more and more people are actually coming in. Earlier when I used to do fashion shows, I used to even laugh at my assistants and say, don't read the reviews because tomorrow the headlines will say, same old, same old. But it's this very philosophy of same old, which is actually working for me and my consumers are coming back. I don't think, when I look at, I dress up a lot of actresses. So when I look at some of these blogs which are writing about them, for instance, much has been made out of Deepika Padukone's flat center-parted hair. They will all say, oh my God, why is she wearing the same hairstyle every day? And I'm like, what's wrong with it? Why do you want to become a new person every day? I remember when I was dressing up Vidya Balan at Cannes, I almost got the tag of being a national terrorist. Yes. I have never been that criticized in my entire life. And 90% of the reviews that I read was about the fact that why is this woman doing the same hairstyle every day? Secondly, everybody said that why is Vidya Balan wearing a sari every day? Now, Vidya Balan was not there to endorse L'Oreal. She was there as a jury. And she thought that it would be nice for her to represent the country culturally and wear a sari. And I've often said this in press, that if I have to dress up Vidya Balan again in Cannes, I would do exactly the same thing. I think what's happened, the internet has opened up a beast in the consumer where we almost demand creativity at the press of a button. We expect a person to become a new person every day, but this is also juvenile behavior. This is also behavior of a consumer who's not confident, because the real consumer is the one who recognizes that and says, okay, fine, she's doing absolutely fine.
Now, you've raised many themes here. I'm going to have to take you back. I mean, what is more in the news rather than Deepika's center parting is her midriff. The fact that she showcased her midriff, and that is being considered as un-Indian and against Rajput pride. And, this is one of the reasons why they're banning the movie. What's your view on that?
I think that's juvenile behavior too, because this is the land of Kama Sutra, this is the land of Ajanta Ellora, and Indians, per se, men and women, have been sensuous. I don't understand the hypocrisy behind sex, because I think it's as normal as breathing, because this is something that everybody does.
Except in Delhi, you don't breathe in Delhi.
And I think men and women both need to recognize that women have breasts, and it's absolutely okay with it. If you don't appreciate it, you don't have to, but at least acknowledge it.
You also raised Vidya. She's also been in the news recently in an incident of body shaming. where somebody asked her, are you going to lose weight or are you going to continue to do women-oriented roles? I don't know what he meant by that, the reporter. But she was body shamed and she put him in his place. Well, what would you say to this constant body shaming, constant judging of women's bodies,
You know, Kalli, about a few years back, I wrote an article about this same incident with Vidya Balan in Telegraph in Calcutta, where I had said that, when you try to get your washboard abs, it actually raises a smile from your face and it gives you crow's feet. I think this entire dictate of having to make women look a certain way has been politicized by beauty businesses because, if you do not keep women insecure, they're not going to buy more. So the more insecure you keep a woman, the more she's going to buy products to live up to that image. But having said that, I think women today are far more confident about the size of their bodies because, and I have a celebrated quote that I use every time. I say that for me, style is about a woman who's 5'1" and wears flats to a party because she does not want to wear heels to look...
Can we please have a round of applause for that, women?
And I say that, she does not have to wear high heels to feel uncomfortable just to be judged by some other man or woman. Because I think when you sink into your own skin, you have a certain kind of a defiant arrogance and that really intimidates men and women too. Which is one of the reasons why Vidya also got panned. Because do you know that when I read through, I had never got this kind of criticism in my lifetime that I got when I dressed up Vidya Balan. And I remember that most of the women who was criticizing Vidya were actually plus-size women. Because I went into their accounts to see what kind of women were doing that. And I just realized that probably they were repressed, unhappy about their body sizes, and they could not deal with the fact that there was a woman out there who was a plus-size woman wearing a sari, being confident and being happy about it. I think sometimes when you're faced with a certain kind of confidence that you fail to arouse within yourself, it opens up a can of worms inside your head, and that was where the backlash started from.
So this is very interesting, right? To be able to come to a space where you're so confident and comfortable in your skin, right? That's when you're ready to wear Sabya clothes. But that's not when people are buying it. They're buying it because they are very often not comfortable and they need those beautiful clothes to say, okay, now this is me, right? So that's a paradox. How do you...
See, it's a thing that I keep building my belief system. Today, my one-point agenda is to create a product that I believe in. And I know that there are two kinds of consumers who will come to me. One kind of consumer who will come to me to buy that product because they believe in the brand. The other kind of consumer who will buy the brand because they need the brand. And now, I am not a person to be able to make that judgment. I'm happy if they're buying because it's creating an employment much needed in West Bengal. And having said that, today, you're free to buy my clothes and interpret it the way you want to, because when something of mine goes out in public domain, you can hang me, celebrate me, that's really your choice.
We discussed this a little bit earlier about celebrating your clothes. A lot of people out here and who are accessing this through the web would like to know, how do they get an appointment with you?
You don't get an appointment with me. I think...
But there's a nice story to that. You don't not get an appointment with you because you're arrogant. There's a story. So please tell us the story.
See, I am great at public speaking, but if you put me in a room with 3 women, I would not know what to say. So my thing is that, see, I have a very simple theory, that if I need to sell myself to sell my clothes, I'd rather not sell myself and my clothes at all. I would rather create a product and see, the problem with Indian consumers is that the Indian consumer in many ways is probably perhaps the most spoiled consumer in the whole world. If you show a woman a sari, the first question that she'll ask you, is there any other colorway? When you show her another colorway, she'll say, okay, can I have that border of this sari in this border? Then she will say, okay, I like that blouse, but can you make it sleeveless? I said, okay, if I make it sleeveless, can you put a dory at the back? Then she'll probably come with a campaign of Tarun Tahliani and say, okay, can you incorporate a little bit of that design into your clothes? I'm like, why come to me? I mean, do it yourself. I'll probably give you the number of a local tailor and an embroiderer, and he'll do it for you. So what we do...
Is this a real incident?
It happens to every designer in this country all the time. We call it customization.
I see.
And in many ways, I would call it bastardization.
Oh, yeah.
But having said that, very early in my life, I decided that, there's a very big difference between service and subservience. I said I will service my customers, but I won't be subservient to them. So if I have spent burning the midnight oil designing an outfit, why do you want to come and change it? And if you want to change it, you're not even buying a Sabyasachi. You're buying your arrogance, or you're buying something that you want to buy. So we have, if you come to a brand, I know I get panned by a lot of people, but we have no customization available. We create something, and it is up to you whether you like it or not. And I think in my stores, there are many options available for you to choose something that fits your sensibility.
Okay, you have been saying this about, you've said it earlier just now in the session, saying, you design things which are timeless, which are actually totally against fashion, right? Fashion is about change. You also say, though you're one of the most celebrated names in fashion, you say, I don't design, right? Can you explain some of these quite contradictory statements?
Okay. Yes, I don't change fashion. Like earlier, we used to have 2 fashion seasons, spring, summer, fall, winter. Now we have resort, we have pre-fall, pre-spring, then there will be more seasons coming in. Then what will happen is, earlier we used to tell people that whatever you buy today will go out in 6 months. Let me tell you something about the business of fashion. The business of fashion has only one mandate. You make your money by feeding on customers' insecurities. You keep the customer more insecure, imagining that the customer will come to you. But very few of you actually realize that sometimes the customer gets wiser, and the customer says, this is a military school boot camp that I do not want to be a part of. So, okay, fine, I'm going to show my middle finger, and I'm going to move out, and I'm going to decide for myself what I want to buy. Now, because of which, we all know something, Kalli, that you might look great in a Sabyasachi sari, but you look much, much, much better in a simple Upada or a simple Kanjivara.
No, I'm not buying that.
I think so. And I think what we do is, we tried, in the entire fashion business, what we tell people is, if you spend an X amount of money, only then you have the access to to look good. So there are no cheap solutions in fashion. At least I don't think any brand really propagates that. So for me, my main issue with fashion was that, A, you're making beautiful clothes. Secondly, B, you're making expensive clothes. People are spending a lot of their hard-earned money and buying those clothes. Earlier, you used to date those clothes in 6 months. Now you date those clothes in 3 months. What kind of bullshit are you talking about? And I think, who actually imagines that the customer is so stupid that they will fall for this con? So what we do is simple, timeless, traditional clothing that people can buy again and again and again. You see, when women buy jewelry, the first question that they ask is, what is the resale value of jewelry? I want to ask women, how many of you have ever sold your jewelry? You don't. So similarly, when you buy clothes, you ask, how many times can I wear it? And I know the people who buy my clothes, probably many of them don't even repeat their clothes more than once. But they buy it with that guiltless pleasure of knowing that, when their daughters grow up, they can pass it on. I think everybody wants to invest in things which are more timeless. It's almost like difference between a marriage and a one-night stand. We don't offer one-night stands, only marriages.
Yeah, I don't think people are wearing your clothes to one-night stands.
I don't think so too.
No, because, clothing these days has become more about bearing the body than covering the body. And maybe those are the kind of clothes you wear to a one-night stand. What would you say? Your sensibility is so much about, maybe not showing that much skin, which is at odds with what is happening internationally.
See, I'll give you a very simple thing. If you leave nothing to the imagination, it's pornographic. If you leave something to the imagination, it's erotic. And if you actually hide a lot, it's sensuous. And sensuality among these 3 things is probably something that's the slowest burner. And it's like slow cooked food. It stays with you for a longer time. So I think that we believe in creating a brand that celebrates sensuality and not pornography.
So like you've just mentioned slow food, you would kind of say your clothing is slow clothing because it takes a lot of time to make and it's handcrafted. And you spend a lot of time in your office creating this. Can you talk a little bit about your creative process?
Well, I create all the time. I don't know if it's an obsession. It's just the way I'm wired. So I create on a flight. I create when I'm in the loo. I create when I'm sitting in the office. My day starts pretty early. I come to work at about 7 in the morning and sometimes earlier. And I go back home more often than not at 2 o'clock at night. So, because it's a fast-growing business, there are many other things that I do apart from just design. And for me, you see, everybody asks about, a question that I'm asked in many business forums worldwide is what is luxury? Okay. I say luxury is something that which is not, if you were to define luxury in a very common way, you would say that luxury is something that's rarefied. Something that is most rarefied for us right now is time. We have everything, but we don't have the essence of time anymore. Modern life has become so fast and so demanding that people have to make appointments with their husbands and their wives to even meet each other.
Yes. True.
So you don't really take time for granted anymore. So when time is of essence, anything that is time bound, whether it's dum biryani, whether it's charkha khadi sari, whether it's block printing, everything becomes luxury. I was in Barcelona when I was looking at Gaudi's architecture, and I was thinking the years and years and years it's taking to make the church. And I look at modern architecture today. I keep asking myself that with all the technology, all the money in the world, everything, can someone build another Taj Mahal again? You can't, because it's not time. It's time bound. You cannot hurry up that process. It's going to take an X amount of year, and nobody has the time to invest anymore. Which is one of the reasons my brand is also steeped in nostalgia, because everything that I really like and everything that I really admire, even if it's music, I've realized that a lot of things were made with a lot of fursat because people had a lot of time and energy to create those beautiful things. Today we don't have it anymore.
Yeah, I agree with that. So is it a memory that you have from your childhood, like old Calcutta, or is it something you have created? Is it fiction? Is the Calcutta real Calcutta, or is it fictionalized in your head?
It was not even Calcutta, actually. I'll tell you, for a lot of people who don't know much about me, I lived in the suburbs of Calcutta. I went to a small school called Sri Aurobindo Vidya Mandir in a town called Chandanagar. I have to tell you, it's a funny story. It's an all-boys school. So I took Christian Louboutin to see my school. I said that, you are working with this designer, so you need to see where his roots are from. So I took Christian in a steamboat to Chandanagar. And I don't read French, so there was this French sign on my school. It's an all-boys school, and Christian looked at that sign and he fell down on the street and he started laughing hysterically. Wow. He said, "I can't believe that your school says that, and you say it's an all-boys school." I said, "What does it say?" He says, "It says primary school for little girls." And that school has been in existence for the last 30 years. The signboard hasn't been changed. Then I have an assistant called Prasun, who came to work with me from Chandanagar. About 6 or 7 years ago, when he came in, I said, "Oh, you're a boy from my pada. So tell me, how is Chandanagar doing?" He said, "It's become very fashionable." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, we have a Levi's store." So I was like, there you go. I went to school in a hand-rown boat. Because our parents, I lived in a small gated community.
True?
Absolutely.
With Rabindranath Tagore's music playing at the back.
No, we used to go to school in a hand-rown boat, and our parents were we lived in a gated community. Our parents were very, very, very particular about the fact that we needed to grow in a cultural environment. So we had singing lessons on our way to school and our way back from school, and Rabindra Sangeet.
Oh my God, I was just kidding.
No, I promise you not.
It is like a film.
Well, we had
like a Satyajit Ray film.
If you've seen films like Cinema Paradiso, yeah. I had a life that was like an enchanted paradise. I remember we had one film theater where when there was high tide, they used to ring a bell and we had to raise up our feet because the water used to come into the, and we used to take our shoes in our hand because the water used to come into the theater. And that is the kind of magical childhood we had. We used to play with squirrels. We had gardens to play with. Children today only play on iPhones. And I think when you grow up with that kind of sensitivity with nature around you, you're bound to succeed. Sorry, it was my childhood that made me who I am.
So is it the kind of simplicity in your childhood which has given you the fire in the belly? Because you come from a very simple place and very simple family, but you are selling luxury to, not just India, but to the world.
Okay, now Kalli, here is something I'm going to say that might disappoint you and many people. I have no fire in my belly.
No fire in your belly. You work from 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. and you have no fire in your belly.
I work for survival, but let me tell you something. I've often felt very guilty about one thing. I feel that I'm one person who has zero ambition.
You have no ambition.
I really don't. I'm very happy-go-lucky. They say that, when you're put on a certain seat, right, you rise up to fill up that seat. So for me, I was given an opportunity. I worked very hard to kind of stay good to that opportunity. But if you ask me, I am very non-ambitious. I remember that I went with Christian on this world tour. And every night he used to ask me out to go and meet his friends. And I used to keep saying, Christian, I'm very tired. I want to go back to sleep. I have a problem networking. You will never see me at any parties, never see me going out anywhere. And I have these amazing collaborations that come to me worldwide. I'll give you a story about a collaboration now, you should know. So I've always wanted to do home. So I was in Paris. So I was in the 5th floor of Galerie Lafayette. Manav, Galerie Lafayette? Okay, we were buying clothes for Aishwarya Rai, poor network. So one of my friends from Calcutta, Rudro Chatterjee, he calls me up and he says that, he calls me Pepsi, by the way. That's the name with which I'm known in the city. So he calls me and he says, Pepsi, to jonno একটা collaboration ache. He said, I have a collaboration for you. William Sonoma wants to call you to America and do a grand collaboration with you. So I look at him and I said, what, are you out of your mind? I don't want to do it. He said, are you very sure? I said, no, I don't want to make tennis clothes. He said, tennis clothes? I said, no, Rudra, I'm very busy, I'll call you later. Manav said, what happened? He said, strange, my friend called me and he said that somebody wants me to make tennis clothes for Venus Williams. I heard William Sonoma is Venus Williams. So I said no to that collaboration. They chased me back and they asked me, and that's how I got the Pottery Barn collaboration. With Christian, another story. He was visiting Mumbai and he was at my store. I'm never at the store. So I was wearing really dirty track pants and very dirty flip-flops because it was raining in Mumbai and I lost my luggage. I came to ask my accountant if I could borrow some money. I look at this man standing there and he looked very familiar. So I asked my accountant, who's this? He said, some gentleman from Paris. They say he makes shoes. So I said, oh, that's Louboutin. So I didn't want to say hello to him because I was wearing really dirty shoes. Christian turned around and looked at me and said, beautiful store. Can you tell me where I can meet Mr. Sabyasachi? I looked at my shoes and I said, do I even tell him that I'm him? Because, I think it's not the right time. So I said, okay, fine, whatever. So I said, sir, this is me. He looked at my shoes, looked at my face, and he said, very nice to meet you. For the next 45 minutes, me and Christian talked about cinema. We talked about Sridevi. We talked about food. We talked about Satyajit Ray. We talked about Ritik Ghatak. And everything under the earth, but no shoes. Before he was leaving, he said, it's very nice to meet you. Can I ask you a question? Do you think you and me can collaborate together and make some shoes? I said, so why not? I didn't have an agent chasing his agent saying that an Indian designer wants to do a collaboration with you. We have never really gone out and hustled ourselves. Work has come to us. And I think that, when you believe in yourself and when you do what you are meant to do, the world conspires to find people who can collaborate and work with you. So, and as many Bengalis in this room would know, one of our biggest problems is that Bengalis don't know how to hustle. And
we've also been told that they don't like to work, but that's not true.
That's not true. Bengalis, it's not true that Bengalis don't like to work. I think with Bengalis what happens is you have to seduce them with the kind of work that they want to do. Bengalis are... what I like about my fellow Bengalis is the fact that, in a world gone completely crazy, they're still idealists. They live within their small little worlds. They think that they can make great changes without getting out of bed ever. But the thing is that they still have idealism inside them. And I think that's quite commendable.
So, but Sabya, that still doesn't answer my question. What then gets you out of bed? What drives you? What makes you tick? Why do you get out of bed?
So, okay, my biggest hero in my life is my dad. He was a refugee from Bangladesh. He came to Calcutta. His mother was a single mother at that point of time, raising up 4 children. Don't ask me how, but that was true. And so I've seen my father as someone who's very, very proud. Growing up, I was shit scared of my father because if I got 98 in mathematics, I would pee in my trousers because
98?
Yes. For him, nothing would do less than 100. I did not know how to go back home because I knew that the badminton racket would be broken at my back.
You are a 98% in maths?
100.
Oh, okay. Learn something new every day.
No, I was a very good student. And you don't even know that in my higher secondary, I ran away from my statistics exams because I was very sure that I wanted to get into NIFT, and I was worried that if my aggregate goes higher, I will go back into IIT.
Sorry, to go back to your father.
To go back to my father used to work in a jute mill in Calcutta, and then when jute got replaced by plastic, he lost his job. And then for somebody who had spent 25 years doing a certain kind of job, it was not possible. So he used to come to Calcutta and get jobs with security agencies, this, that, and everything. And he was a very proud man. And I remember I see my father washing dishes on the kitchen sink, looking very distressed. The lack of money in our family almost broke my parents' marriage, and they've been happily married for, I'm 43, 46 years. And they still love each other like nobody else exists. And I realized that, this is havoc of unemployment because employment, I don't believe in charity. Let me tell you, I don't do any charity. What I do is I create employment because I think charity is not sustainable, because charity comes from a point of being condescending. I think the best thing to do is to create employment for people and let them do charity for themselves. And the reason I get out of bed is we have a very simple philosophy in our company that if a machine can do the work of 10 people, kill a machine and hire 10 people. So my HR has a mandate that every year he has to raise up the employment of the company by about 20%. And currently we have, with contractors, direct employment, indirect employment, we employ about close to 4,800 people in West Bengal and about 35,000 people all over the country.
Wow.
And that is something, also, let me tell you, and you can find this from anybody in my organization, everybody's bills, everybody's salaries are paid within the first 5 working days of the month. Everyone. And that's not easy, that comes with a price. I am almost getting ulcers. Hair is falling off, graying, bad nails,
look very good.
bad teeth. But that's the only reason why I keep getting out of bed at 7 a.m. in the morning and work till 2. It's a big high.
A lot of what you've talked about almost sounds like a film. You going to school sounds like a film, music's playing, you're rowing on the boat. This scene of your father in the house near the sink with the dishes sounds like a film to me. You turning up to work every way to provide employment for all these people. Do you have a film running in your head?
Well, 2 years ago I had written a script. Oh. It was about Calcutta. And I had shown it to a few directors that I work with, and they were very excited. They asked me to do the film. I didn't want to do it because I didn't have enough money. And I'm slowly putting away a little bit of my money because I want to finance my own film. Because I think that when I tell my story, it needs to be told it should be told the way I want to tell it without financial, political, or social interference from my producers. So hopefully, if I save enough money in the next 2 or 3 years, I'll direct the film.
So your sensibility seems to be very much like Sanjay Leela Bansali's, or am I confusing it because I've seen you design outfits for his movies? Is it?
The common thing between me and Sanjay is we are both maximalists because, I don't think that we understand minimalism very well, though I'm wearing something very minimal. But having said that, Sanjay is more theatrical, I'm more real. We have different ways of creating maximalism.
Okay, but we had a little discussion just previously in the speaker lounge, and actually your wardrobe is very minimal. You only have a few colors. You only wear a few clothes. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because that's, again, like a sort of paradox.
It's not really a paradox, it's a truth. It is a paradox, but if you actually look at people who are very successful in their own fields, you'll realize that there's a certain sort of detachment. I build these larger-than-life vision of clothing and interiors and everything, but I live in a very simple house. It's a rented apartment, 1 bedroom, with I still don't own a house because I don't believe in owning houses. And I'm very detached with many things. I don't take pictures. I don't go to parties. I don't take selfies. I don't take selfies of food when I'm eating my food because I prefer to eat my food. And I have a very small edited wardrobe because I know what looks good on me. Very few things, so I hold on to them with pride. And I think one of the reason, it's almost like the child in the emperor's new clothes. He has the guts to say that the emperor is naked because he really looks at it from a detached point of view. He's not attached. He has no relationship with the emperor. One of the reasons I've been very successful in fashion is because I look at it from an outsider's perspective. If you really ask me, I know nothing about fashion. It doesn't even interest me. What interests me is the fact that I do good clothing, and good clothing and fashion do not really always go hand in hand.
Why do you say that? This is why I think a lot of people in the fraternity see you as an outsider, right? You say things like, fashion is not good, you're not supposed to change clothes every 3 months. Things like fashion and clothes don't go together necessarily. Explain that.
I always ask a few of my friends.
Fashion friends or real friends?
Real friends, fashion friends. I said, let's say I ask some of my women friends who are so addicted to change all the time. I said, tell me something. You are changing every single day of your life. You're trying to be a new person. I'm not trying to get sexist here, but I think men should have the equal opportunity. So tomorrow if your husband shaves his chest hair and has pink hair and comes back home because he says he wants to be a new person, how would you react? She said, oh my God, no, he can't change. I said, why do you expect? I said, if you don't advocate that change when it comes to the opposite sex, have you ever asked a man whether he likes his woman to change every day? Because you want to, good relationships are about continuity. Style, iconism is all about repetition. I think what is happening in the world is there is change for change's sake. It's almost like rebel without a cause. I'm a person, I'm a Piscean, so I'm probably very sensitive. Kalli, when I made my first little bit of money, a friend of mine, Divya, Himmat Singh, she at that point of time used to double up as my secretary. She bought me a ticket to Phuket. And she said, you cannot go to Goa anymore, you've become a big man. Go abroad for an international holiday. That was the first holiday that I'd ever been to. And I keep going back to Phuket every year, and I try to stay in the same hotel. Because, I meet all the same hairdressers. I go to the same restaurants to eat the same food. So for me, relationship building is important because, when there is so much of variety in your life, a little bit of sanity that you can hold on to only comes when you don't change.
Do you think that sense of permanence comes to you because of the very stable and loving relationship you see between your parents?
100%. You see, I don't come from a dysfunctional family. I don't come from a family that's broken up. I come from a family that has values. My father lives in a very small house that was given by his mother. For the last 10 years, I've been persuading him and my mother to go to, because his knees are giving away. He still climbs stairs. We don't have an elevator in the house. He still does not want to move out because he says, this is my sentimental thing and don't interfere. I said, okay, fine. He still goes to the local market in Lake Market to buy his own fish and bargains with the fish person. He could have all the luxuries in the world. He still thinks that Nike is the best brand that was ever born, because he say, you want to give me something luxury, give me something from Nike, because he loves Nike. And I like the fact, I won't even call it naive. I just think that he keeps it real because that's what he believes in. And when you come out of a house where everybody's so normal and stable, you just don't think in a dysfunctional manner. It's never occurred to me. So when I sometimes, I'll give you an example. I still make very normal clothes, quote unquote, and it is very subjective. So when my friends from outside who are engineers or doctors, they come and talk to me, they ask me a few questions. They'll say, does Rani Mukherjee really talk to you? Hey, have you ever seen Deepika? Have you ever seen her naked? I said, no, we don't go into their changing rooms. Then they'll say, okay, I want to ask you a question. Boss, I understand everything. What kind of clothes do you make? Who wears these clothes? Really? I said, yeah, really? Because see, most of them use public transport when they go to work. Many of them, for them, their big social issue is that their child has scored 73 in mathematics. And then somebody is saying, I won't have food in the house today because my wife and my maid had a fight and the maid left. And this maid used to make good food. My wife has too much of an ego. Now I have to go home and make food after I come back from office. These are their real everyday problems. They can't understand why will a woman pay something upward of 50,000 rupees for a sari when their wife got married in a 5,000 rupee sari and she thought that was luxury. So when you come from that kind of, they say that when you were born middle class, no matter how much money you acquire in your life, you'll always remain middle class, because middle class grows with a certain kind of a value that pushes in so much horse sense that it can never come out of your system.
So what is luxury for you then?
Sleep. I don't get enough of it. And for me, luxury is also about nurturing relationships. I am someone who gets very worried about change. I just got used to an iPhone 6. There's an 8 and there's a 10. There's a lot of catching up to do. And I think it's tiring after some time. I wish that, you create one phone that is so good that you never have to upgrade it. And people will buy again and again, probably make it a little non-tactile or something that you can break very easily. But don't upgrade that phone that every time I get a message beep in my phone that you need to upgrade your iOS system. And I keep saying, later. So for me, I think there's too much change happening in the world. And you see, what has happened is that when I look at midlife crisis today amongst youth, midlife crisis starts at 23. Because by the time they're 14 or 15, they're all adults. And when you yank people out of their biological age by making life so super fast, everybody becomes dysfunctional. And that is something that worries me about the world today, that, we are all moving at a very fast pace. Do we, there was this poem, I think it was Leisure. I forget who wrote it. Maybe it was Wordsworth, I'm not sure. Which says, what is this life if full of care if we do not have time to? Who was this? Kipling? What is this life if full of? To stand and stare. What is happening with us? Look at how children behave. Everybody's switching channels. Nobody's watching anything. You're planning destinations without enjoying your journey. You're taking selfies of food without realizing that the food should be eaten while it's hot. So people are not living in the moment anymore, and there is so much of peer pressure to become somebody else all the time. How do you survive? And I think that, this is a bigger social cycle. It's going to crash very soon because this is not sustainable.
Did you suffer in any way when you moved from small town or from the suburbs of Calcutta to the main city of Calcutta?
Absolutely. In fact, I was with Deepika for a depression forum and I said that, and I remember the journalist was very shocked because I said it in open forum that yes, I was depressed. I tried to kill myself. I tried to commit suicide. I thought that if I take 30 Campos pills, I'll die. But what happened that I felt nauseated and they had to pump my stomach out. And my mother gave me a tight slap when I recovered. And
Bach gaya, slap.
Never again.
Another movie moment. I can see the movie frame.
But what happened was the fact that, It was just adjustment problems because I came from a very idealistic world. Now, if you think that the Calcutta is the armpit of fashion of India, just imagine what Chandanagar would have been. Because when I came from Chandanagar to Calcutta, the move was shifting from the suburbs to Paris. I don't think that I missed my friends. I missed the garden. I missed the river, the school, the boatman, everybody. And I just wanted to go back home. And I didn't have the guts to tell my parents that you have spent so much money educating me and putting me in St. Xavier's College that I want to go back home because I'm a failure. It happens to all people. You don't make adjustments. That's fine.
So what's your advice? Because like you said, lots of kids, lots of people go through this. The stigma still exists, right? People won't talk about it. People won't seek help. What is the one thing that you would say to people who are watching this who may be suffering some kind of mental disorder, whether it's anxiety or whether it's depression?
For me, depression is as common cold. Depression happens because of many reasons, and it's absolutely fine to be depressed. If you're not depressed, you're not normal.
You're not successful.
No, you're not sensitive. You have to, like depression is a cyclical game that's a part of everybody's evolution. And I think too much is talked about. I don't understand why we make such big things about things like sex, depression, this, that in this country. These are very, very normal things. And like for me, my depression was a period of enlightenment. It gave me clarity as to what I wanted to do. What it also did was it legally put me off school, so I could use that 1.5, 2 years to think about what I really wanted to do with my lives. Had I not been depressed, I would be sitting in IIT. India would have lost me to probably somewhere in San Francisco, where I'd be sitting as a digital clerk in some company called Google.
That's not too bad a thing, but I'm glad we got you back.
I'm happy that I'm here.
Time's up. I could talk to Sabya for ages and ages. I'm sure you guys would like to listen to him. He talks so well. He should talk more.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad that you're here with us because for the last 2 days, it's like we've had a Bengali thali, the royal Bengali thali. And if you hadn't joined us, we wouldn't have had the mishti. So it would have been incomplete.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for being a part of the conclave.